Hi, I'm Jake, I'm 15, and welcome to Orpheus Games. I love board games, and today I'm excited to do Marvel United and Marvel United X-Men, talking about their Kickstarter and retail versions. And just before we start, if you subscribed or commented, it would make me happy. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about the overview of the game mechanics and the different ideas in general, before talking about the appearance, design, practicality, and final thoughts. You'll see the specific breakdown on your screen here, and you can skip to those specific sections if you are interested. In the design section, we're going to talk about the complexity, mechanics, and innovation comparing the two different games then. But first off, what is Marvel United? Marvel United is sort of a deck building boss battler, technically. You have these locations, and each of your characters is going to be represented by a miniature, and you're going to grab two decks for different characters like Vision and War Machine. And then you're going to put them on the board, and then you're going to pick a villain, like, I don't know, anyone from here, like Onslaught or something. And then you're going to put him on the board. And then you're going to grab a deck of like 10, 20 cards for each of them. And then you'll set them out, you'll shuffle the decks, and then you're ready to play. It's super plug and play. You can choose any of the different heroes or villains in any combination across these boxes, and all of these behind me from Kickstarter. So first off, and then on your turn, you're going to be playing different cards as heroes, performing heroic movement and fight actions to do different things, like defeating civilians, defeating thugs, rescuing civilians, or clearing threats or traps put in place by the villains, or defeating certain villainous henchmen. You have to complete 2 of those missions before going up, and then you have to punch the bad guy to death, to knock them out and arrest them before they are able to complete their villainous plot. So that's the overview of the game, and if you want more specifics, however, you can check out other videos. I'm not great at teaching how to play. So first off, the artwork for the game, which is the same for both. So this is one of the most controversial parts of Marvel United. Each of the characters are designed in a chibi style, which is more of an animated or exaggerated sort of artwork, different from like the MCU or like being very specific. All the characters have slightly larger heads, there's different highlights across them, it's very bright, very cheerful, not very like dark or comic-y or anything, which I think is really cool. It's different from a lot of other games, and I appreciate how it tries to set itself apart, and I can still easily recognize all my characters, and I think it's cute how they look, looking at all the different characters and seeing them and recognizing them. And all the heroes have different artwork across their cards, like sort of representing the different moves they're doing. There's like 4 or 5 different card art that changes and alternates like between like the 10 or 15 card decks, which I think is cool. The components for the game. So that's overall the artwork. I enjoy it. I think it's cool. Some people don't. And if you don't, I'll have an alternative recommendation at the end of another game that I think you might like. So for the components for the game, this is the same for both. So one of the things is this game is a collaboration between CMON and Spin Master Games. Spin Master Games is handling the retail, and I believe they wanted to have it as cheap or as accessible as possible in the retail edition, so there's no board for the game. But instead you have these location sheets, sort of. They're like they're not cardboard, they're like a thicker sort of plastic, but they're very flimsy and like wavy around. But you'll have those out across the board, and then that's how you're moving to different locations. There's no board, but there was a playmat available from the Kickstarter. And the locations are okay. The same materials for the villain dashboard and like some of the main components, like for the missions and things. It's fine, it's nothing great, it's all right. And they had improved cardboard versions, but I don't think you need those. This version works well enough. And then also the character minis are phenomenal. They're one of CMON's best, I think. They're very detailed. And another cool thing is like for different aspects of a character, you normally have to like free paint. They're already on the figure, like for Drax, he has like his red tattoos and stuff. You don't have to freehand those, they're already done on the miniature. And all the minis have these cool scenic bases, which is like a different scene in which each of them are in. And adds some character and background to each of the figures. They have like their own little diorama. The miniatures are really good, and I really like them in the game. And they're very expressive for all the different characters and look great painted up, but not by me, I'm really bad at painting. And then there's also some standard cardboard components for the thug and civilian tokens, which are good. Components are all around pretty solid. The flimsy villain cards and locations are a bit below average, but the miniatures are definitely above average and top notch for CMON. Moving on, and that's the same for both games. Moving on to the theme. So this is one of the things. It's Marvel, you know if you like it. It's super cool, super fun. Bad guys punching each other, nothing dark or anything. But that's one of the differences between these two games. Since most people, if you look at one of these two, they can name most of these characters from the MCU, but not necessarily a lot of these. There are lots of comics fans who obviously know all of them, but the majority of the time, most of these characters in Marvel United X-Men are lesser known, and the ones in Marvel United or I'm just going to call this Marvel United, even though this is Marvel United X-Men, are more well-known here. And however, I'll touch on that later, why that might not necessarily mean you should get this game instead. And we'll touch on that when we're talking about the design. So first up, the complexity. Marvel United is a fairly easy game to teach. It's really simple, and you're going to have these cards you're playing out are also, this is like sort of combination complexity and mechanics. If I play, for example, if I'm playing as Vision and I play a card where I move and do a heroic action, and then War Machine plays a card where it's like 2 punches, on his turn, he'll get the benefits of the cards before him. So he'll get to move, heroic, and double punch. And then on Vision's turn, let's say he plays a card with heroic, he'll get to punch, punch, and heroic. So you're working together, and it encourages cooperation and discussing across the table, which really helps the game. It's not that difficult to learn. All of the symbols are fairly intuitive, and the only slightly complex thing is learning the different rules for each villain, but they're usually very simple and not that complicated to understand the differences of each villain. You just read their card and then you're done, and easy to get into the game. One of the parts of that, though, is customizing for each of the different villains, which is like one of the most fun parts. So, for example, using an example from the Marvel United core box, there's Ultron. Ultron is all about putting out a bunch of thugs and civilians, and if he wins, if all the locations are filled up with thugs and civilians. So, for example, you might want to play a hero, such as Hulk, who clears an entire area when he Hulk smashes. Or you could play someone like Magic with lots of damage, who's able to clear large areas easily. Or Hawkeye, who's able to shoot across the board if you're not in a place or board to a cross location if you're not able to be near it. You sort of defeat a villain, or they defeat you, and then you figure out how to fight them and fight them better than before. You can beat villains with random combinations of heroes, although that doesn't happen nearly as much. And another part of the mechanics are the villains in Marvel United X-Men are pushed to their limits. And what I mean by that is in Marvel United and all the Kickstarter stuff, all the villains are solid, they're cool, they're interesting and engaging, and it made the game a 5 out of 5 for me, especially out of 5 stars when I was looking at this and all the different villains and stuff available in this Kickstarter pack and all the other expansions. But once I got Marvel United X-Men, it's insane the potential they pushed it to. In Marvel United X-Men, there's some villains who have threats face down and you'll have to discover, or different personalities, or they don't move. They're sending spawn tokens around, so don't spawn henchmen where they are. They're bamming on every single card. It's hard to explain without knowing everything about the game, but Marvel United X-Men, the villains and heroes are so much better. Like, it's not like, it doesn't ruin this game for me, but it certainly pushes it down because these are so much more unique. Even though I might be playing a Scarlet Witch, I don't necessarily feel that much like Scarlet Witch necessarily, but that depends on the heroes. Like Doctor Strange, I definitely do, but that's because of special abilities. Some cards have special abilities, and in Marvel United, almost every character had 3 special ability cards, while in Marvel United X-Men, the baseline is 4, but lots of heroes have much more than that. That allows you to embody the hero and do more cool things on your turn, which is definitely fun. I don't know a ton of these characters from Marvel United X-Men, but I would rather have the cool powers and unique abilities than playing as a character I know and not feeling as strong or unique or different. When I'm playing Marvel United X-Men and I'm playing as Sunspot, even though I don't know who that is, I think I'm doing cool things, and it's a lot of fun gaining different tokens and changing them and things, even though I don't know who the hero is by themselves. So that's a reason I think definitely to prefer Marvel United X-Men, and the villains are definitely pushed and a lot more different and engaging and challenging than Marvel United. My win rate for Marvel United X-Men when I checked a couple of days ago on BG Stats was about 42%, while Marvel United was 65%, I believe. Although I do play on the hardest difficulty. That's another cool thing. Each hero has wild cards in their deck, which can do any action, and you'll remove certain number of those to make the game more difficult. I always play on the maximum difficulty since that's what I like, but it's easily customizable to whatever difficulty suits you best. But because of that, I think the mechanics are definitely better for Marvel United X-Men. They're pushed to their limit. They're a lot more fun. You're gonna have fun with Marvel United, and the villains are great, but when you compare them, X-Men blows this out of the park. So innovation is sort of what games do differently, or why you should prefer this game over others. And one of the big ones, I think, is the Marvel theme. I don't know if this game would appeal to me nearly as much if it didn't have the Marvel IP. It's what made me get it, and I think it's what makes a lot of people get it, and it has strong mechanics to back it up. It's a cooperative, fun Marvel game where no one necessarily has to be the villain, although I'll touch on that in a second. And it also has unique abilities and very strong and unique ideas, especially in X-Men. Now, what I said about the villain is another cool thing. In Marvel United and in X-Men, you can push it and change it how you want. So in this mode, you can play it cooperative for 1 to 4 players against the villain, but with Marvel United X-Men in the base box, you can have a player play as the villain, where they're drawing a hand of cards for the villain and playing as them, so it could be 1v1 or up to 5 players, where it's a 1 versus many game. Or there's also certain heroes that can play as either heroes or villains in Marvel United X-Men. They're called anti-heroes. Like Magneto, Mystique, or Emma Frost are all certain examples where you can play them as a hero or a villain. And the Blue Team expansion, you can also play it as a competitive game where you're having the characters, heroes in different teams, and whoever deals more damage to the villain in the end wins. Marvel United X-Men has a lot more modules and changes to include for the game, like the Phoenix Force with the campaign, or different ideas that are implemented in the game, while Marvel United just has more characters that you know and love. Like, it'll have, like, the Sinister Six mode is supposed to be good, or the Infinity Gauntlet campaign where you fight Thanos. Marvel United is, overall, like, if you pick between them, I think, besides the characters, you should obviously choose Marvel United X-Men. Oh, and it's entirely cross-compatible. You can use any of the characters against any of the characters from either one, or with them, I mean. And I think if you're looking at the retail box, which has like the more famous X-Men characters like Storm and Wolverine and Professor X and Jean Grey, I think you should definitely choose Marvel United X-Men. The villains are more unique, it's more challenging, it's more fun, I think, with the different powers you're able to implement. While Marvel United has the more well-known characters that you know, although I will say you don't feel necessarily as those characters that much, but it is cool to be like, I'm going to play War Machine, I'm going to play Hawkeye, I'm going to play whoever you like in like more of the MCU or TV show stuff. Well, this is more of the X-Men movies, obviously. So now the practicality of the game, so the price. So it's kind of hard to talk about the price since the majority of the content was Kickstarter exclusive. These boxes both had a ton of stuff and a lot of the expansions were Kickstarter exclusive too, which makes it kind of hard to say or give a set price for them since it fluctuates often, although I would check eBay since some of the expansions are really good. But for the base box, both of them are on Amazon for like $15, I think, for Marvel United, and for Marvel United X-Men, it's like $20, I think. They're really good prices, especially for the miniatures. Even if you don't care about the game at all, it's an amazing price for those amazing minis. So that was the price, and for storage. This is all right for the game. Each of the boxes will have the characters you expect from that, and they'll be in the top and then the cards with them. Although that can cause a bit of a hassle. Like, let's say you wanted to play as Star-Lord and Vision against the Sinister Six. So you'd have to grab the Guardians of the Galaxy box, the Kickstarter box, the Core box, and the Infinity Gauntlet expansion, the Sinister Six expansion, all to combine it for that way. There's lots of storage solutions online, although it doesn't take that long to set up comparatively. There's a lot of boxes, but besides that, inside of the boxes, they're very easy to take out the cards you want, take out the miniatures, and you can be set up in like 2 or 3 minutes. And I definitely recommend the folded space insert for Marvel United. It helps transport it around, carries lots of miniatures in the core boxes, and allows you to have these little token trays for the general components that you can take out of the insert and put on the table, which I use every single game. They're really nice. So, final thoughts. You'll like Marvel United if you're looking for a fun cooperative game with a variety of modules, fun characters, and you get to feel like a superhero. It's sort of a boss battler, but it's not like violent or dark or anything. It's kind of, it's hand management, it's teamwork, it's a lot of fun, it's a great family or gateway game. You'll dislike this if you're looking for something very challenging, or it is pretty challenging X-Men, but not necessarily Marvel United, or you're looking for something with like more strategical depth, Or if you don't like the chibi artwork at all and you want something different, or you don't like a cooperative game, since that's what it is at its heart, I wouldn't buy a blue team and expect to always play this competitively. That's not what the game is meant to be or what it's balanced for. So alternative recommendations, I can recommend Marvel Zombies is the biggest one I think I'm going to recommend. So the same company, Come On, and Spin Master Games, they're making Marvel Zombies based off the Marvel Zombies comic. I know, mind's blown, which is more like the darker, grittier comic book theme and stuff, since you're eating bystanders and things, which is kind of weird. But it's more of the darker, it's slightly more complicated, although not that much. And it's more of the realistic artwork, the comic book artwork, and what you're looking for if this repulses you or something. Although I don't think you should, it's great. So now moving on to the score. So I use stars as were recommended. If you have any suggestions, you can leave a comment and I'll take them into consideration in future videos. So Marvel United for me, by itself, when I just had this, was the core box was a 2 or 3 out of 5 stars. Because once you play the villains a few times, you can only play each villain 1 or 2 times each, so it wears out quickly. You definitely need expansions, and I would definitely recommend the Spider-Verse bundle on Amazon if you're interested in Marvel United, where it comes with the Spider-Man expansion, which adds Green Goblin, and it has Doctor Strange 2 in that, and Spider-Man, and Spider-Gwen, and Spider-Man. I mean, since there's the 2 different versions, Peter Parker and Miles Morales, but all of those are great characters. And I think for score-wise, the base box, the components were fine, but once the real meat of the game is in the villains, less so for Marvel United X-Men, since the heroes are amazing, but especially in Marvel United, it stands on the shoulders of its villains, and without a lot of villains, you're not going to be in for a great time. So it was fine, the base box. I would have gotten rid of it probably if I didn't know my Kickstarter stuff was coming, but it did, and I really enjoy it. And this by itself, with the Kickstarter content, this box basically just by itself, and the retail box is easily 5 out of 5, one of my favorite games. Super fun, strategical, you get to play as your favorite characters, and it's awesome. But once Marvel United X-Men arrived, I definitely prefer playing as X-Men and facing X-Men villains each time. This pales in comparison when compared to X-Men. It's still a 4 out of 5 and is fun, and I would play it, but I'd rather pull out an X-Men hero or an X-Men villain, which will really shake up the game and provide a unique experience for me. Both of these games are amazing and phenomenal. Make sure to check out the Kickstarter stuff, and they're definitely one of my favorite games of all time, but X-Men, I think, is significantly better and a lot more enjoyable, even if you're not a fan of the characters. Thank you for watching Orpheus Games. If you subscribe, I will smile. And if you have any suggestions or comments or ideas for future videos, you can just comment down below. I'm sure everyone knows how to do that. Bye!